I myself was once a young little girl who was interested in science and didn't see role models who looked like me. And I said, you know what? I want to do my part to be that small piece of representation for these girls. If I can inspire one girl in a room full of 100 to go into a field and pursue a career in STEM, then I have done my work.
That voice belongs to Jackie Means, Miss Black USA Talented Teen 2021, Miss Philadelphia 2023, and now Miss Caribbean 2025. Titles matter, but her purpose matters more. She uses every platform to inspire underrepresented girls to explore science, technology, engineering, and math. Welcome to Harmony Talk, where dreamers and doers come together through powerful personal stories. Harmony Talk is sponsored by AM Skyer, supporting leaders who lift others as they rise. I am your host, Greg Frigoletto. Jackie founded the Girls Empowerment STEM Initiative at the age of 12 and is widely known as the STEM Queen. Today, we explore how a young woman turned pageant platforms into a movement, why representation in tech matters, and how her personal mantra, lift as you climb, is reshaping the pipeline for girls in science and engineering. This is a story about leadership that starts early, grows fast, and never stops. Jackie, welcome to Harmony Talk.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here, and I could tell already that your enthusiasm is going to make this a lot of fun.
Yes.
So, Jackie, to begin, this is a podcast that looks to inspire by sharing stories that demonstrate that dreams can become a reality, even when there are great obstacles to overcome. In other words, dreamers become doers. Now, knowing some things about you, and I hope to learn a lot more today, I would say that our premise here at Harmony Talk, that dreams can become a reality, is right in your lane. This is what I think Jackie's all about. So I'm confident that as we go through this, our listeners are going to agree. Now, I know you grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and from what I gather and from what I've read, I believe in many ways life in Wilmington inspired you. And if you could maybe start there for us, tell us a little bit about how your story began in Wilmington.
Absolutely. So I'm a born and raised Delawarean. I'm 302 through and through. But I grew up specifically in Wilmington, Delaware, which is in northern Delaware. A lot of people like to joke that it's basically a part of Philadelphia because it's like very city, and then the rest of Delaware is kind of like farm country. But nonetheless, Delaware. But my specific part of Delaware in Wilmington was called Southbridge. And Southbridge has unfortunately been dubbed Murder Town USA by Newsweek. There's a lot of gun violence. There's drug issues happening there. There's breaking and enterings, just a lot of just really negative things happening in that community. And it is really, truly underserved. And that's, my hometown where I grew up. And living there, I really wasn't allowed to go outside much for, obvious reasons. So I would go straight to school and maybe, a little after school thing and then come right back home. I wasn't really allowed to go play in the streets or ride my scooter around like kids in other neighborhoods could do because it was safer outside in those other areas. So my fun thing to do indoors became science. I would go in the kitchen and grab whatever I could and make all these little concoctions that my mom would be so mad at me for making because I would always make these huge messes. But I just loved it so much. And a couple years later, this was maybe when I was 8, so a few years down the road, I was thinking to myself, I have got to do something for my community. These kids, I see them out there all hours of the night, just doing these bad things. And I said, I want to be a part of some kind of effort to bring positivity to my neighborhood and to these kids that need this positivity so much. And I was thinking to myself, and I talked with my mom, and I was like, okay, I don't know how, but I'm going to use science to make my community a better place. And she was like, Jacqueline, how are you going to do that? And I was like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We brainstormed some more and came up with the Wilmington Urban STEM Initiative, which I later renamed the Girls Empowerment STEM Initiative because the impact had expanded from just my home city. But that's kind of my backstory. You know how they say villain origin story? Well, this is my STEM queen origin story. It just came out of a desire to bring positivity to my vastly underserved community.
I want to talk about that. And I know as you're going through that, you describe Wilmington, Delaware as the murder capital. And what a horrible, horrible way to be dubbed if you're a city in this country. But living there in Wilmington, you mentioned that, your parents wouldn't often let you go out of the house. You were kind of inside. But as far as having a foundation that's built for you, was family a big part of your foundation?
Oh, absolutely. My mom she's my best friend. I know that's really nerdy to say, but she really truly is my best friend and my biggest inspiration. My mom has instilled in me from a very, very young age that you have to lift as you climb. You can't go out and seek success. And when you get that success, not look back and say, you know what, I'm going to lift others up as well. That's how we make the world go round. You have to help others the same way you would want others to help you. She's instilled that in me from a very, very young age, not only in me, but my older brother. He actually had a chess initiative. You think I'm a nerd. He's a bit even bigger nerd. But for chess, he loves the game. He actually would teach kids in our community as well about chess. So both of us, she really had this strong desire for us to give back and do what we can, our small part. If everyone can do just one thing a day to make their world a better place, then I think that's how we make the world a better place. You can't be selfish, basically. That was what she was teaching us.
I would agree. And by the way, your mom being your best friend is absolutely refreshing. And I wish more kids could say that. Now, as far as that foundation being built by your mom, and you had an older brother that it sounds like you may have looked up to as well, you went to public schools?
I did. So for elementary school, public school, middle school, public school, and then for high school, I actually went to a charter school, the Delaware Military Academy, which I can't talk about enough. I love DMA. I like to boss people around. I'm a very type A bossy person, and DMA let me be that. I finished, what was my rank? I was Bravo Battalion Commanding Officer. So I commanded half the school, which I just love. I was totally on a little bit of a power trip, but I loved it.
Well, congratulations. And through that experience, was there a specific teacher or a role model that turned you on to science? How did that part of your story happen?
Yeah, I wouldn't say any particular teacher throughout, my primary school years. I would go home and I would watch, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and I would go on YouTube and just look up science videos, little experiments I could do at home. I just loved what I was seeing and loved what I was doing. So it was more, I don't want to say like a self-taught, because I absolutely did utilize the internet to teach me about these different subjects I was so interested in. But just sitting there, being stuck inside and finding these cool things online to do, that was it really. Just trying to find some way to entertain myself, and science fell right into my lap and I never let it go.
You were mentioning earlier that as you were in your house and you were looking outside and you would recognize that there's a lot of kids outside. And from what I'm gathering, you would have known that, like I say often, everyone has a story. So what you were seeing are kids that are out there that have a story that maybe was a little bit unlike yours. And I know that some of the statistics that exist probably would be part of what inspired you with your initiative. I'll tell you statistics, and I know you know these, but for our audience, it's important that they hear it as well. 60% of teens in the area you grew up at the time did not have high school diplomas. 29% of the STEM workforce being women was a number that really you wanted to change.
Absolutely.
So what was it that inspired you to go down the path of this Girls Empowerment STEM initiative? Was it looking out your window and being inspired by what you saw and wanting to do better and to help? Was it at an early age you started to look at some of these statistics and think, we could do better than that? Talk to me about the specificity of that initiative and how the girls piece of it tied into what one of your goals would be.
Absolutely. I think it was for sure a combination of those two. Looking outside my window and seeing these kids who very clearly didn't have the same support system I had been blessed to have. My mom, outside of being on my brother and I about giving back and volunteering, school was the number one priority at all times. And, for me, still currently is. But these kids, they didn't have that at home. And I knew that not only was I blessed to have a mother who emphasized the importance of education and doing well in school, but outside of that, emphasized the importance of volunteering. And I said, you know what? I'm lucky enough to have someone who is supporting me in these efforts and teaching me about the importance of these things. I should give back, so that came from my mom, and I developed this kind of want inside me on my own to give back. Like, my mom isn't coming to me every day now saying, hey, are you still giving back? Like, that's just something I love to do. But she cultivated that in me from a very young age. So again, looking outside, seeing those kids and just thinking, it's like my duty. I need to give back. I have to. And then outside of the kids, the number of women in STEM was extremely discouraging. When I was looking up scientists, I didn't see pictures of Black women. I didn't see pictures of Puerto Rican women. I saw white men, and that's great. But what about me? I want to see some representation. I'm sure other little girls want to see some representation as well. And that was so discouraging. So doing a quick Google search and seeing that people who look like me weren't coming up, looking at those statistics and seeing that women like me weren't being represented in these fields, it was all just this big push and motivation for me to give back and create the Girls Empowerment STEM initiative. I myself was once a young little girl who was interested in science and didn't see role models who looked like me. And I said, you know what? I want to do my part to be that small piece of representation for these girls. If I can inspire one girl in a room full of 100 to go into a field and pursue a career in STEM, then I have done my work. But I just took it upon myself. I said, if someone has to do something, why not me?
I think that's really powerful and important. The two statistics that we just went through, one, the lack of women that are in the STEM field, but more importantly, women of color, and how inspirational for you to be driving that bus to make that a better number. And one of the things that I thought about when I was looking at that particular piece of your story is your effort to provide exposure. And by that, I mean exposing young people, young women, young ladies of every background to the world of science. We had previously an interview with a gentleman by the name of Zach Wall. Zach Wall was a guest on Harmony Talk, and Zach is a co-founder of a program called Project Flex. And what Project Flex does is it works with incarcerated youth, and it brings physical activity to them in their incarcerated life to provide them structure and positive thinking and a hope. One of the parts of that program is to bring the incarcerated youth for a one-day immersion into a university. So they get to see what it's like at a university. And what their data is starting to tell them about Project Flex is that exposure increases the likelihood that a student will believe that they can do it and that it can be part of their future. And I kind of crosswalk that to what I see you doing with the young ladies you're working with. If you could do that crosswalk for me.
For sure. I am a big believer that seeing is believing. And that's part of the reason why when I go into these schools and into these community centers, I don't just go up in front of these groups of students and lecture them. I'm in college. I sit in lectures all day. And as interesting as I find my majors, I'd rather be doing something with my own two hands, And I feel that kids are the exact same way. As a child, I was a kinesthetic learner. I learned that phrase in second grade, and it couldn't have been more true. Some people are auditory, meaning they learn best by listening. Some people are visual, meaning they learn best by watching. But I know myself, and I feel that all kids are kinesthetic learners, which means they learn best by doing things with their own two hands. So that's why I place such a major emphasis on going into their environment and not only going up there and talking to them and being that representation, but providing them with aprons, trays, goggles, beakers, chemicals, all the things that they need to get their hands dirty and have this positive hands-on experience themselves. I feel that it not only sticks better for them, but it makes it so much more engaging. I'm talking about how fun science is. And they're like, okay, lady, is it really fun? And now instead of just listening to me talk about it, they get to experience it themselves. So absolutely, as I said, seeing is believing and, really doing is believing. So when I talk to them, say, hey, you can do science. Science is fun. It's an awesome career to have. Not only am I instilling this in them in an auditory manner, but in a kinesthetic manner as well, because they're blowing stuff up. They're seeing amazing reactions happening in their own two hands right in front of their own eyes. So just making that kind of tangible, positive experience for them is so key to what I do. And I make it happen in whatever community I'm in, whether it's a school, a church. I've done my demonstrations in all kinds of places, but definitely wherever it is, no matter where I go, making it that tangible, hands-on experience is a key part of the demonstration.
And it sounds like not only the tangible connection with hands-on, but also a real great demonstration of talk the talk, walk the walk. And I know for you, you talk about holding steadfast to your own standards of excellence and achievement. In other words, you walk the walk and you don't just talk the talk. What does that look like? If somebody wanted to know, what does Girls Empowerment STEM initiative look like? You just gave a little bit of an example of going into towns or churches, but what actually takes place on the days that you're exposing these young ladies to your world of STEM?
For sure. So I have I don't want to say persona because it is just me, but Jackie and the STEM queen are the same person, but I'd say the STEM queen is just a more glamorized, sciencey version of myself. So I walk in, I love platform shoes. That's very important. I walk in these platform, pink shoes, and then I have my rhinestone lab coat, and it has big letters in the back, rhinestone bedazzled to death, of course, STEM queen, and it has a cool science symbol on the front. It's just really shiny and very girly, which for me, I think some people think that that's like not intentional. It is so intentional because I feel that oftentimes little girls feel that they can't be in a male dominated field and be feminine. Like you kind of basically have to be like a boy to be in these male dominated fields. And I say you do not have to sacrifice your femininity to be in these male dominated fields. I walk in the platform shoes, the rhinestone lab coat, my curls, my jewelry, and I am still just as smart and probably doing it even better than the boys. but
Yeah, there's a lot of girl power there.
Absolutely. I walk in my lovely lab coat and my platform shoes and everything, and I say, "Hi everyone, I'm Miss Jackie, and I'm known as the STEM Queen. Can you say hi, STEM Queen?" And they all go, "Hi, STEM Queen." And sometimes there's kids who are just not interested. They're like, "I am so bored right now. Get me out of here." And sometimes there's kids who are just completely enthralled already, and I haven't even blown their minds with science yet. But I give them my little introduction. I tell them a little bit about myself. I'm a college student. I started my initiative to inspire kids to get involved in science, especially girls. We're really all of STEM. And then we get down to the fun part. I keep the intro short, less than 5 minutes, because kids' attention spans, they don't really have them. I start getting into the experiments and I like to build it up from what I would consider the least exciting experiment to the most exciting experiment. So we start with something simple, like a sodium polyacrylate thing, which is really just like a simple sponge kind of like mechanic. So I add some water, it grows before their eyes from something really small to really big. And they're like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I do another one where it's like a edible slime. And they're like, "Oh my God, this lady's actually awesome." And I usually like to go into a couple more, but I love to finish with like elephant toothpaste. I feel like everyone knows elephant toothpaste. It's this big, big, messy experiment. I love that one. It's so visual and engaging and fun. And by the time I've done that one, the kids are like, "Can you never leave? Can you just stay here and be our science teacher for the rest of time?" But it's so fun. So that's kind of like a little basic breakdown of how it usually goes. But by the end, every single kid in the room is enthralled. They are so excited. They're all have their hands up. They're asking questions, which for me I don't want to say educator because there are true like teachers, but as a pseudo educator, that's my sign that I'm doing my job right. To have every hand in the room raised and let me know that they're paying attention, they're excited, they want to be engaged. That lets me know I'm having a successful STEM demo. But that's basically how it goes. I let them know that this is something they can do themselves. It's something that is exciting and fun. It's not just for boys or it's not just for, non-people of color. Anyone can go into this field and have an impact and make a difference. That's kind of my whole message, but that's the breakdown.
As somebody that's in the field of education, I could tell you just hearing you talk, I can imagine that there's an instant connection. And because education and learning really begins with people, that connection that you're making, walking in with the bling and the heels and the excitement is a hook. And from that, then you throw in science. As you said, you blow their minds, which I think is really great. Now, I'm going to give you a quote. Speaking of blow your minds, this is a quote that I think you might be familiar with, but is a blow your mind kind of quote. And then I want you to tell me after I read it what it means to you. "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." Tell me about that quote and what it means to you.
Absolutely. So that is a quote from Dr. King. And that is actually something I mentioned several times that my mom has instilled in me, this not even need, but just strong like duty to give back. And that was actually one of the very first quotes she shared with me about giving back. And now if you're thinking that doesn't have anything to do with giving back, well, my mom, the way she framed it for me was that you always need to be doing something to give back and lift others up. If you're not a millionaire, you can't give $1,000,000. Well, then maybe you need to just go pick up some trash. And if you can't go pick up trash, maybe just go read to kids at the community center. But no matter what you're doing, you need to be doing something to make the community a better place. So that's kind of how she framed that for me as a kid. And it has always stuck with me. I actually said that exact quote in my TEDx talk from several years ago. I think that was when I was 15, which is crazy to think. That was 8 years ago? It's been a long time. But I said that in my TEDx talk. That is such a major flashback for me. I'm actually glad you brought that up. I haven't thought about that in years. And it's very much at the core of why I do what I do and continue to give back. She said that to me decades ago now, at least over a decade minimum. But I haven't thought about it in ages, but it really does ring true then and it rings true now.
It still resonates. And, obviously I'm just meeting you really for the first time and I've never met your mom. But based on the way you're describing your mom, I love your mom. We need more moms like Mrs. Means is out there kind of inspiring the youth of today. Now, Much like your audience, you work with young people. You're a motivator, you're a mentor, and I would imagine for your audience, these young kids, their stories, even though you're not 14 or 15 anymore, you're also at a point where your story is just beginning, right? So there's a lot more ahead. What would you tell your young audience to encourage them to be the curators of their own stories?
I love that question. I think that, at least for me, when I was in high school, I, of course, had my initiative and I was giving back, but I didn't really associate, I guess, that what I was doing now would continue to transform my future. I thought everything was kind of segmented. Like what I do in high school is just for high school. What I do in college is just for college. What I do for my professional career is just for my professional career. But it never really occurred to me until honestly pretty recently in my college career that it's all strung together. So I feel that it's important for kids to recognize that you're never too young to start doing what you believe in, whether that's maybe acting, or maybe it's singing, or maybe a career in STEM, or whatever it may be. You're never too young to really start working hard towards those goals, whatever they may be. So I think that that would be my main message. I started my initiative when I was, I'm going to say 12 years old, which when I was doing it, I was like, this is crazy. No one wants to sit in a business room and talk with a 12-year-old girl. But they did, they listened to my message. They listened to what I had to say. And they're like, hey, we'd love to support. So you're never too young to start doing what you believe in.
I would agree, Jackie. I find that the youth, the kids of today, they're not understanding that what they're doing currently is one of the dots in the connect the dots of what's going to be ahead. And I agree that we need to have and find a way to have kids understand the importance of what they're doing now and that it's not segmented like you've just described or in silos. One thing leads to the next. How could we excite them in the beginning and get them to that point of understanding? And maybe you could shed some light on that because that is something that we haven't accomplished yet, I believe, in working with kids. Is there a way that we could have them get to that point like you did?
I feel like it's so important, again, for representation. Going into schools now as this older person, which is so weird because in my head, I'm still like the cool high schooler, but I'm in college now. So when these kids see me, they see like a true adult, which is so interesting because my dad still calls me kid. But to these young kids in, middle school and elementary school, I am the true adult. So when I come in and talk to them about what I'm learning in college and what I hope to do in my future career, all these different things, I hope that they think to themselves, oh, wow, if she can do it, then I can do it too. I talk to them about how I started my initiative and how I continue to give back even all these years later. And that, and this is just a personal example, but I hope it resonates for other people as well, that when you go and talk to these kids, kind of like a career day, honestly, when you give them that representation, it allows them an opportunity to see themselves in you. Like, oh, down the line, when I grow up, I want to be so and so. Or when I grow up, I want to do exactly what Miss Jackie did. So, really, this long winded answer boils down to letting kids see themselves in you. Does that make sense?
It does. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the exposure and the value of role models and people inspiring you. So exposing kids, having them see great people like you in a position where you're being launched and demonstrating that it can be done might have them be able to focus in a way that they didn't know that they could or should. Now, you just mentioned that you're now a college student. I believe you're attending the University of Delaware. And I think, back in the day when you were just a kid, you might have had dreams of being a neurosurgeon, I believe.
Yeah.
But maybe your idea has changed. What's next for you and what are you currently studying and what are your plans moving forward?
Yeah. So when I was 7, and I told you I spent a lot of time inside, so maybe I was going a little crazy. But when I was 7, I said, you know what, Mom, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. And she was like, okay, honey, whatever you like. She always jokes that she was like, my daughter is either going to be a serial killer or a surgeon because I would go on YouTube and I would look up like brain surgery videos and I would just sit there and watch them. And I had this little like suture pad and I would like do the sutures along with them. And she was like, she's crazy, either in a good way or a bad way. But I did have dreams of being a neurosurgeon. I got to school, I studied neuroscience and pre-med, and I was sitting in one of my like biology labs. I think it was microbiology. And I was like, you know what? This isn't quite for me. But I've always had a major knack for technology. I am a huge nerd through and through. I actually built my gaming computer with my own 2 hands. It's like my most prized possession. So I've always had a major knack for technology. And I said, you know what? I think I should major in something kind of more suited towards what I'm naturally good at. So I switched over to management information systems and I said, you know what, throw in marketing too. It's always a good skill to have. And so what I do now is I study a lot of like coding stuff. So Python, C Sharp, all those different kinds of coding platforms. And it's really interesting. And I'm glad I switched. I love that it's still under the STEM umbrella, but it's just so much more up my alley. So that's my current path. But I always joked with my mom, maybe I'll go back. I did enjoy doing those sutures. So we'll see. But for now, I'm loving learning about coding. It's so interesting and it's perfectly geared towards where the world is going. We have a lot going on with AI and generative technology. So it's perfectly suited for the way of the future.
And I think that demonstrates the importance of loving what you do. And the level of excitement you have even in just explaining what you're doing currently, I think you're on the right path. Now, one of the other things that I know you've been involved with, and maybe you could talk about it just a bit, is getting involved in pageants. And I'm wondering, with your experience in pageants, how that platform assists you in getting out your message.
That's a great question. So when my mom always jokes, she's like, you wear so many hats, and it's not just hats, it's crowns too. So with pageantry, I always like to make this like distinction. So sometimes people say, oh, Jackie, it's so great that you got into pageants and then started your STEM initiative. And I always have to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I started my initiative when I was 12. I didn't do my first pageant until I was like 15 or 16. So the STEM work came first by a long shot. Pageantry, at least the systems I was in, the Miss America system, has a heavy, heavy emphasis on volunteerism and giving back, which, as you know, is at a very core part of who I am as a person because of my mom. So when I first heard about pageantry, I saw the crown, I saw the sash, I said, I'm sold. And then I saw the dresses, I said, I'm double sold. But when I heard about the volunteerism, I said, this is something I have got to be a part of. So the great thing for me about pageantry is that I already do, this work to give back and get young girls interested in STEM. And pageantry just brings an additional positive spotlight on the work that I'm already doing. I have this service initiative that I do regardless of if I have a title or a crown and sash. And having that title just gives me another platform to amplify my message. When I walk in, I already told you about the platform shoes and the sparkly lab coat, but you can imagine what walking in with those already, plus a crown and sash does. It just brings even more positive attention to the work that I'm already doing. So it's such a major amplifier, like a microphone, to give me an even louder voice to talk about the work that I'm doing to get girls excited about STEM.
That's amazing. I really appreciate that you're able to get that message out, and you take advantage of any platform you can. And I've seen that you've been on TV shows like The Today Show or Access Hollywood. How do those opportunities arise? And tell me a little bit about your experience with those sort of endeavors.
Sure. So I mentioned that I have my marketing major along with my MIS major. And now I'm thinking about it, I feel like that came from my mom. My mom is the marketing queen. So you're asking, hey, how did you get on those shows? Really, my mom. I would go, into the schools and community centers and do my STEM demonstrations, and my mom would snap these pictures, and then she'd say, you know what, Jacqueline, you have such a great story. It's so inspiring talking about growing up in this underserved area and using that as motivation to give back and continuing to give back for all these years. We have got to get this out there. And she contacted the Steve Harvey show, the Kelly Clarkson show. As I got older, I started helping out too. We would reach out to Access Hollywood, just all these different shows, just to say, you know what, this is something positive and the world needs to see this. There is enough negativity going on. Let's talk about something and share something positive. That's how that came about. We just told them what I was already doing. We said, hey, you've got to learn about this. We told the Today Show, and they came out to one of my events and recorded, I think it was 100 girls in that room. It was amazing. Just getting the positive message out there. There's, as I said, enough negativity, and it was something that we felt really needed to be shared.
And based on what I know, everybody's fighting for airtime. Everybody's scrapping to get their time and their space for whatever their platform is. And based on the volume of things that you've been involved in, clearly your story is one that's been viewed as a story that has to be told for that reason that you just described, that positive story, that inspirational story. And I could tell you, just speaking with you today, I am inspired. That's for sure.
You're so kind.
I'm very excited. Now, the last question I have for you, and it's just kind of a fun question, but this is one that tells a little bit about somebody. And maybe you could elaborate on this question. Your first concert that you attended and your last concert.
My first concert ever, I was with my dad and my older brother and two of my very good childhood friends. And we went, so as I said, I'm a nerd, but that goes to many different aspects. So I'm an anime nerd, I'm a gaming nerd, I am a movie nerd, I'm a Broadway nerd, but outside of all of that, I am a rock nerd. I love rock music. When I was a kid, my dad would just play these awesome rock albums, and I loved it when I was little, and I love it now that I'm older. So my first concert was for Shinedown and Skillet. To
Wow.
me, some of the greatest rock bands. I know some people would disagree, but I just love their music. And actually, my most recent concert was yet another rock concert for a group called Coheed and Cambria.
Oh, yeah.
So don't listen to those three groups. They're amazing. Your life will be changed.
Actually, I know all of those groups, and I would agree that they're all really good. I have to say, and I don't know why I didn't expect you to go down that path, but I'm even more impressed after hearing your taste in music.
Thank you. I'm a woman of many interests. You know, I could go and sing Broadway classic and then go right into a Coheed and Cambria rock song.
Well, I'll tell you this. You've said you're like a self-described nerd. You have made nerd so cool. Everybody's going to want to be a nerd now. I'm telling you right now, Jackie, you've just reinvented it. Well, listen, I have to tell you, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. You have an incredible story. You're just beginning. You've inspired many, many, many kids, and I know there's many more that are going to be inspired by you moving forward and hopefully by our time together on this podcast.
Absolutely.
I've been talking with Jacqueline Means, a.k.a. the STEM Queen. Among many other things, Jackie is a TED Talker, motivational speaker, and founder of the Girls Empowerment STEM Initiative. To learn more about Jackie, you can log on to her website at stem-queen.com or follow her on her socials at STEMQueenDE. This has been Harmony Talk by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm Greg Frigoletto. Thank you to Jackie Means for being with us today. To our listeners, continue to dream and keep doing.